Hello, my friend. Tonight we stand inside the smoke of a dying capital, while the wind carries ash across the terraces of Persepolis. The palace lamps are failing. Their flames bend and tremble in the night air, as if even fire has grown uncertain beneath the weight of what is happening. Beyond the columns, where carved soldiers from many nations still march forever in stone. Real soldiers move through the darkness with torches in their hands. Their sandals scrape against polished floors. Their shadows climb walls built for kings who once believed the world could be arranged beneath a single throne. The great cedar beams above the halls are dry. They have rested there for generations, brought from distant mountains, lifted into place by hands that are now dust, gold, ivory, glazed brick, black stone, silver bowls, painted timber, embroidered curtains. All of it waits in a silence too deep to be peaceful. Somewhere, a jar breaks. Somewhere else, a door gives way. Then a flame touches wood. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the palace begins to breathe fire. Smoke rises slowly at first, curling around the feet of stone bulls and the calm faces of royal guards carved along the stairways. The figures do not move. They do not cry out. They have watched embassies arrive from deserts, valleys, islands, and river kingdoms. They have watched men carrying tribute beneath the eye of the great king. Now they watch the roof glow red from within, and the old order begins to disappear into heat. Outside, the mountains of Fars stand black against the sky. They have seen winter snow, spring grass, and the long caravans of empire. They have watched kings depart toward Egypt, Babylon, Lydia, Bactria, and the far Aegean shore. They have watched messengers ride out on roads so carefully maintained that news could cross impossible distances. But tonight, the mountains watch something different. Tonight, the center of the world is burning, and yet the strangest thing is not the fire. It is the quiet question beneath it. How could an empire so vast, so rich, so carefully governed, come to this hour? The flames move from chamber to chamber. They find painted ceilings and storerooms filled with objects gathered from across the earth known to Persian kings. The empire that raised these halls stretched from the Indus lands in the east to the coasts of the Mediterranean in the west, from the deserts of Egypt to the mountains beyond Mesopotamia. It held languages, gods, customs, armies, taxes, gardens, fortresses, and roads beneath one imperial imagination. It was not merely a kingdom. It was a world. A soldier pauses beside a carved relief. In the wavering light, the stone seems almost alive. Men in long robes carry vessels. Others lead horses. Others bring cloth, metal, animals, and gifts from lands far away. Their faces are calm. Their gestures are orderly. No one in the carving appears conquered. No one appears afraid. They walk toward the king as if creation itself has accepted its arrangement. But stone can preserve a dream longer than flesh can defend it. The fire climbs higher. In the great audience hall, the columns rise like a forest of stone trunks. Their capitals, shaped with double animal forms, once supported a roof that made visitors lift their heads in wonder. Imagine a foreign envoy entering at dawn, after weeks on the road. His clothes marked with dust and his mind full of rumors. He would pass terraces, stairways, guards, inscriptions, polished surfaces, and the careful theater of imperial power. Everything told him the same thing. This realm was made to last. Now sparks drift through that same hall like falling stars. The empire did not fall in one night. Not truly. No empire does. Its ending gathered slowly, in choices, ambitions, resentments, revolts, victories, and silences. Yet there are moments when history gives its long invisible movement a visible shape. A city burns. A king flees. A gate opens. A crown changes hands. The old world does not vanish completely. But everyone who survives understands that something has passed beyond recall. This is such a night. The men who walk through Persepolis are not ghosts. They are tired, hungry, dangerous men, carrying the habits of long campaigns. They have crossed rivers and mountains. They have seen cities surrender and armies collapse. Some stare at the wealth around them with disbelief. Some are angry. Some are drunk on victory. Some are only following the motion of events, swept along by forces greater than themselves. In their hands, history becomes very simple. A torch, a door, a flame. But the Persian Empire was never simple. It was a structure of astonishing scale, built from mountain tribes, old Mesopotamian inheritance, royal ambition, and an unusual gift for turning conquest into order. Its kings called themselves great, not because they ruled one people, but because they ruled many: Persians, Medes, Babylonians, Egyptians, Jews, Lydians, Greeks, Phoenicians, Armenians, Elamites, Bactrians, Sogdians, and many others lived under its shadow. Some hated it, some served it, some prospered within it, some barely saw the king at all, except through taxes, officials, soldiers, and stamped commands. This was an empire of roads and rituals. It was an empire of gardens and punishments. It allowed local traditions to continue, yet demanded loyalty to the throne. It could appear tolerant and terrifying in the same generation. It could restore temples and crush rebels. It could welcome diversity while insisting that all roads led, in the end, toward the king. That tension made it powerful. That tension also made it fragile. As the roof beams crack, a sound rolls through the palace like distant thunder. Men look upward. A shower of sparks falls into the darkness. The carved walls glow orange. The old ceremonial stairways, where delegations once climbed in careful sequence, are now lit by destruction instead of sunrise. In the trembling light, the empire seems to tell its own story in reverse. Here are the nations bringing tribute. Here are the royal guards standing forever. Here's the king enthroned above all. Here's the fire. The scene is almost too symbolic, and yet it is made of real things. Heat against skin, smoke in the throat, splinters underfoot, the bitter smell of burning cedar. The stunned silence after something magnificent gives way. A palace is architecture, but it is also memory made visible. When it burns, the loss is not only wood and stone, it is the burning of confidence. Still, even as Persepolis burns, Persia does not disappear. Its languages, customs, administrative habits, religious ideas, artistic forms, and imperial dreams will travel onward in ways no conqueror can fully control. The fire destroys halls, but not memory. It consumes beams, but not the idea of kingship that these beams once sheltered. It turns treasure into smoke, but not the question that rises from the ashes. Who were these people who nearly gathered the known world under one rule? The night deepens. The flames settle into their work. Above the palace, the stars remain cold and remote, watching as they have always watched. They watched the first shepherds move through the Iranian highlands. They watched chiefs become kings. They watched Cyrus rise, Babylon open, roads stretch outward, and royal messages fly across the empire faster than rumor. Now they watch the glow of Persepolis redden the mountain stone. For a while, the world seems still. A column cracks in the heat. A soldier turns away. Ash lifts into the darkness, soft as black snow. Beneath it lies the story of an empire that almost ruled the entire world, not by accident, and not by force alone, but through a vision vast enough to hold many peoples inside one royal horizon. And in the silence beyond the flames, the old Persian dream waits to be understood. Across vast plains, the empire opens like a map too large for one mind to hold. There are mountains first. Long backs of stone rise from the Iranian plateau, pale under winter light and violet at dusk. Their passes are narrow, their winds severe, their villages tucked into folds of rock where goats pick carefully along slopes. Snow lingers on the high ridges, while, far below, dry valleys wait for spring rain. To cross this land is to understand that power here begins with endurance. Then the world widens, westward. The roads descend toward Mesopotamia, where rivers move through old earth with a patience older than kings. The Tigris and Euphrates curl past fields, canals, reed beds, temples, walls, and cities whose names already sounded ancient when Persian horsemen first saw them. Babylon sits there like a memory made of brick, heavy with gods, merchants, scribes, astronomers, and stories of rulers who once believed they held heaven in their hands. Beyond those rivers, the empire stretches again. It reaches toward the Levant, where cedar forests scent the mountains and narrow coastal cities look out across the blue Mediterranean. Ships from Phoenician harbors move between islands, ports, and headlands, their sails bright against the sea. Men speak in counting houses, unload purple cloth, glass, timber, oil, wine, ivory, and metalwork. The sea is not empty. It's a road of waves, and Persia learns to command it through the hands of others. Farther south, the land changes into heat and glare. Egypt lies along the Nile like a green blade drawn through desert. On either side, sand rises into silence. Villages cling to the riverbanks. Priests tend temples, where painted walls preserve the names of gods older than almost every dynasty. Farmers watch the flood, measure mud, and plant grain under a sun that seems eternal. Persian officials enter this ancient land and find not emptiness, but another complete world, one with its own rhythm, pride, and sacred geography. The empire does not merely cover distance. It gathers worlds. To the north, highlands and cold valleys lead toward Armenia, the Caucasus, and the edges of the steppe. Horses breathe steam in winter air. Fortresses stand near passes where snow can trap armies and silence roads. Traders and soldiers move carefully through lands where loyalty may depend on clan, pasture, tribute, or fear. Here, the empire feels less like a palace command and more like a chain of watchfires burning across difficult country. To the east, the distances grow stranger and more immense. The roads run toward Bactria, Sogdia, Arachosia, and the lands near the Indus. These are regions of mountain shadows, oasis towns, river valleys, dust, and long caravan routes. Men lead camels beneath skies so wide they seem to erase the importance of cities. Lapis lazuli, horses, gold dust, spices, timber, and stories pass from hand to hand. Beyond each ridge, there may be another people, another language, another god, another tax collector waiting beneath the royal seal. How does a king rule such spaces? The question becomes almost physical. It lives in the hooves of horses, in the aching legs of couriers, in the ink of scribes, in the patience of officials who must translate command into obedience. The great king may sit in Susa, Ecbatana, Babylon, or Persepolis, but his will has to travel through deserts, river crossings, mountain gates, and city streets. It must become letters, orders, seals, measurements, inventories, taxes, and sometimes spears. The royal road gives shape to that will. From western Anatolia toward the heartlands, a traveler can follow stations, guards, bridges, and rest points laid across tremendous distance. The road does not abolish hardship. It organizes it. Dust still covers faces. Wheels still break. Animals still tire. Bandits still haunt lonely stretches. But now, the empire has created a rhythm across the land. A message can move from rider to rider, from station to station, with a speed that astonishes those who remember the slowness of ordinary travel. Imagine a courier at dawn. He wakes before the sun fully warms the earth. His horse stamps beside the road. The leather bag is checked, the seal inspected, the water skin filled. He does not need to understand the whole message. He carries authority because the king's mark says he does. Soon he is moving through a pale morning, past fields, shrines, watchmen, and sleeping villages. By nightfall, another rider may take the same order onward, and the king's voice continues without sleeping. Yet roads carry more than commands. They carry merchants with pack animals and cautious eyes. They carry soldiers in dust-colored columns. They carry craftsmen seeking wages, priests traveling to sanctuaries, envoys with gifts, exiles under guard, and families moving toward uncertain safety. A road is never only stone and beaten earth. It is a bloodstream. Through it pass grain, silver, gossip, fear, luxury, disease, prayer, and ambition. The empire's cities form islands of human intensity within this great movement. Susa gleams in the lowlands, humid and old, with Elamite memory beneath Persian rule. Babylon rests among canals, crowded with scribes, priests, traders, astronomers, laborers, and foreigners who bring their own habits into narrow streets. Sardis in the west looks toward Greek cities and inland routes, rich from old Lydian power and the trade of Anatolia. Ecbatana rises in the highlands, cooler and more withdrawn, a place of walls, seasons, and royal movement. Each city has its own smell. Babylon smells of baked brick, river mud, incense, sesame oil, animals, and crowded markets. Sardis smells of wool, metal, wine, smoke, and mountain air drifting down from the interior. Egyptian towns carry the scent of river reeds, grain dust, temple resin, and sun-warmed stone. Along the coast, salt hangs on everything. In the eastern satrapies, dry wind moves through bazaars where the smell of leather, camel sweat, and spices gathers in shaded lanes. To rule all this is not to make it the same. Persia's achievement lies partly in accepting difference without surrendering control. A Babylonian scribe may still write in cuneiform, An Egyptian priest may still tend the rituals of his temple. A Phoenician sailor may still calculate winds and profits in the old way. A Greek city may still quarrel in its assembly, at least until tribute, revolt, or military necessity draws the king's attention. Local life continues, but above it stands a larger roof. That roof is imperial authority. Its pillars are tribute, military service, loyalty, roads, governors, records, and the haunting presence of the king. Some provinces give silver, others provide grain, horses, timber, ships, soldiers, or specialized goods. The empire knows how to count. It knows how to demand. Behind the ceremonial beauty of royal art stands the quieter labor of assessment, storage, delivery, and enforcement. There's grandeur here, but also pressure. A farmer near the Nile may never see the king, yet a portion of his harvest belongs to a system reaching far beyond his village. A trader in Syria may profit from safe roads and protected routes, yet he also lives within a structure that can take, command, and punish. A noble in Bactria may enjoy local prestige, yet his loyalty is watched by men who carry royal authority. The empire offers order. It also casts a long shadow. Still, the scale is astonishing, from the Aegean world to Central Asia, from the Nile Valley to the Iranian plateau, from wealthy cities to windswept borderlands. The Persian Empire binds lands that had never before lived under one ruler in such breadth. The distances are not abstract. They are measured in cracked lips, worn sandals, river ferries, mountain nights, caravan bells, and the silence between settlements. At sunset, a traveler standing on a ridge might see nothing but open country, no palace, no army, no royal banner, only the last light moving across dust, stone, and grass. Yet somewhere beyond the horizon, a road continues. Somewhere a scribe records tribute. Somewhere a governor reads a sealed order. Somewhere horses wait in a station yard, ready to carry the will of a king across lands so vast they seem almost beyond rule. And for a while, against all difficulty, they are ruled in the quiet spaces between palace walls, battlefield dust, and the slow movement of caravans. The Persian Empire leaves behind a set of questions that do not fade easily. Who were they? The answer is not as simple as a name carved on stone. The Persians were a people, but they became more than a people. They were a ruling house, a language of power, a network of nobles, a military tradition, a sacred imagination, and finally, an imperial idea large enough to include many nations without becoming any one of them. A man might be Persian by birth, Persian by service, Persian by loyalty, or Persian only in the eyes of those who felt the king's command. That uncertainty matters. It is easy to picture empire as one color spreading across a map, but real empire is always layered. A Persian official may speak to an Elamite record keeper. A Babylonian priest may negotiate with a royal administrator. A Phoenician ship captain may serve a king whose language he barely understands. A Greek mercenary may fight for Persian pay while dreaming of a city across the sea. Beneath the royal title lies a human world of accents, customs, bargains, and uneasy obedience. So where did they come from? Their roots reach into the Iranian plateau, into a landscape of mountains, high plains, dry valleys, and seasonal pastures. Long before royal inscriptions declared universal authority, there were communities shaped by movement, herding, farming, kinship, and memory. Their identity grew in contact with neighbors older, richer, and more urban than themselves. Elam, Assyria, Babylonia, and media all stood around them like great teachers and rivals, offering models of rule, warfare, writing, ceremony, and fear. No people rises in isolation. Persia's story begins among pressures. There is the pressure of land, where water must be guarded and routes must be known. There is the pressure of stronger kingdoms, whose armies and courts reveal both danger and possibility. There is the pressure of ambition inside noble families, where loyalty can bind men together or tear them apart. And there is the pressure of memory, the belief that a people is not merely surviving, but being prepared for something larger. How did they rise? Not in a single leap. Power seldom moves that way. It gathers like water behind stone, slowly, quietly, finding cracks. The Persians learned from those they encountered. They absorbed habits of court display, tribute-taking, cavalry warfare, diplomacy, oath, and command. They understood that conquest was not enough if conquered lands were left bleeding and resentful. They discovered that a king who wished to rule many peoples had to appear both distant and present, merciful and dangerous, chosen and practical. This is one of the great mysteries of their ascent. How could rulers from a rugged homeland take command of cities older than their own traditions, priesthoods deeper than their own memory, and economies more complex than anything a tribal chief could have managed alone? The answer lies partly in adaptation. Persia did not simply destroy the worlds it entered. It studied them. It borrowed their scribes, their systems, their symbols, their ceremonial language, and sometimes even their gods' respect. A conqueror can seize a throne. An empire must learn to sit on it. The Persian kings seem to have understood this with unusual clarity. They presented themselves not only as warriors, but as restorers of order. They entered lands with armies, yet often spoke the language of protection, legitimacy, and rightful rule. In Babylon, Egypt, Lydia, and elsewhere, imperial power wore local garments when necessary. It did not always need to erase. Often, it preferred to absorb. But why did their world change? Every empire carries motion inside it. A realm that expands must govern new peoples. A king who conquers must reward followers. A court that grows wealthy must manage envy. A frontier that moves outward must be defended, supplied, and explained. What begins as victory becomes administration. What begins as ambition becomes burden. The same scale that gives glory can also create distance, delay, misunderstanding, and strain. There's a quiet danger here. When a ruler commands lands from the Aegean to the edge of India, he does not simply possess them. He depends on them. He depends on governors who may become too powerful. He depends on roads that may be cut. He depends on soldiers whose loyalties may divide. He depends on treasuries, harvests, river systems, mountain passes, scribes, interpreters, and weather. The king may be called great, but greatness rests on countless fragile arrangements. Still, the empire held together for generations. This endurance deserves attention. Many conquerors win battles. Fewer create continuity. Persia built a pattern of rule that allowed many regions to function within one imperial frame. The empire could be stern, but it was not mindless. It knew when to use local elites. It knew when to demand tribute and when to grant honor. It knew that religion could either ignite resistance or support stability. It knew that a governor's seal could sometimes accomplish what an army might only damage. What did they leave behind? Not only ruins, not only carved kings, winged symbols, broken columns, or royal tombs cut into cliffs. They left an image of empire as organized diversity under a single sovereign will. They left administrative habits that later powers would study, imitate, resist, and transform. They left memories in Greek histories, biblical texts, Babylonian records, Egyptian documents, and Iranian tradition. They left stories of royal roads, swift messengers, ceremonial courts, noble horses, grand gardens, and kings who stood at the center of a vast moral and political universe. Yet memory is never neutral. To some, Persia appeared magnificent, disciplined, and lawful. To others, it seemed arrogant, luxurious, and oppressive. Greek writers often portrayed Persian kings through the anxieties of smaller city-states facing a continental power. Local records could praise a king who restored a temple or condemn the burden of taxes and garrisons. A subject's view depended on where he lived, what he owed, what he gained, and what he feared. A farmer measures empire differently from a courtier. For the farmer, empire may be the tax collector at the edge of the field. For the soldier, it may be a long march through country whose language he cannot speak. For the priest, it may be a royal decree protecting sacred land. For the merchant, it may be safety on roads and wider markets. For the rebel, it is the fortress on the hill. For the king, it is a horizon that keeps receding. This is why the Persian Empire cannot be understood only through battles. Its real power lived in the meeting of vision and routine. A royal inscription may speak of truth, order, and divine favor, while in a storehouse someone counts jars of grain. A king may receive envoys beneath carved columns, while a mule driver curses a broken strap on a mountain road. A governor may issue polished commands, while villagers whisper over what those commands will cost them. Empire is made from ceremony, but it survives through daily compliance. And beneath all these questions lies one deeper question. What does it mean to nearly rule the world? For the Persians, the world was not the whole planet in the modern sense. It was the known and reachable order of lands, peoples, rivers, deserts, and cities that surrounded their imperial imagination. To rule it meant more than possession. It meant arranging difference beneath hierarchy, turning distance into obedience, turning conquest into ritual, and making power feel natural to those who saw its symbols every day. For a while, that vision seemed possible. Across languages and landscapes, men and women lived within a system that asked them to recognize one highest king, one imperial center, one structure of command. Some bowed willingly. Some bowed because there was no choice. Some resisted and paid dearly. Some benefited enough to accept the arrangement. Out of these unequal responses came one of history's most influential experiments in rule. The questions remain open in the silence of old stones. Who were they? A people of the plateau who became rulers of nations. Where did they come from? From hard lands that taught endurance, and from older civilizations that taught the language of power. How did they rise through war, adaptation, diplomacy, administration, and an instinct for imperial balance? Why did their world change? Because expansion creates both grandeur and weakness. What did they leave behind? A memory of power so vast that even its enemies helped preserve its name. To understand the Persian beginning, we must enter a land that does not give itself easily. The Iranian plateau rises like a great stone table between Mesopotamia, Central Asia, the Indus lands, and the southern seas. It is not one simple country. It is a world of ridges, basins, salt deserts, high meadows, narrow valleys, and sudden pockets of fertility. In some places, the earth is green for only a brief season. In others, it is pale, cracked, and silent, as if rain passed over it centuries ago and never returned. Here, landscape teaches caution. A village may depend on a spring hidden in rock. A herd may survive only because someone remembers the path to summer pasture. A family may measure wealth not only in land, but in animals, water rights, kin alliances, and knowledge of roots through difficult country. The people who lived here learned early that nature was not a background. It was an authority. It rewarded patience, punished waste, and made arrogance dangerous. Across the plateau, the seasons carried power. Spring could arrive with flowers across the steppe, turning dry country suddenly bright beneath a blue sky. Grass would rise, animals would fatten, and people would move with them. Then the heat would harden the land. Dust would gather on faces and tools. Water would shrink back into channels, wells, and carefully guarded systems. Winter could bring snow to the mountains and bitter cold to exposed settlements. Life required planning. Life required memory. From these conditions came habits that would shape a people. Movement mattered. So did loyalty. So did the ability to cooperate in small groups, to defend animals, to negotiate access, to endure hunger, and to think in distances. The early Iranians who moved across these lands were not born into the polished order of great palaces. They lived closer to animals, fire, weather, and oath. Their world was carried in stories, names, rituals, weapons, and the spoken authority of elders. But they were not isolated wanderers at the edge of history. The plateau was crossed by routes that linked older worlds. Goods traveled slowly through it, sometimes in the hands of traders, sometimes as tribute, sometimes as plunder, sometimes as gifts between chiefs. Metalwork, horses, textiles, carved objects, and ideas moved from valley to valley. Words moved too. Sacred formulas, heroic memories, social ranks, and myths passed through families and clans, carried by voices long before they were fixed in writing. In these early horizons, language itself becomes a clue. The Persians belonged to the wider Iranian-speaking world, sharing distant kinship with peoples spread across broad regions of Inner Asia and the plateau. Their ancestors carried traditions related to Indo-Iranian belief, where fire, truth, cosmic order, ritual speech, and the struggle against chaos held deep importance. These ideas did not yet belong to a single empire. They lived in households, sacred spaces, and repeated ceremonies under open sky. Imagine an evening settlement in the highlands. The animals are gathered. Smoke rises from low houses. A child listens while elders speak of ancestors, heroes, and the unseen forces that guard or threaten the world. A woman grinds grain. A man repairs a leather strap. Dogs bark at movement beyond the settlement edge. Near the fire, someone speaks carefully, because words are not empty. A promise binds. A lie stains. Truth is not merely a habit. It belongs to the structure of existence. This sense of moral order would become important. In later royal language, Persian kings would speak of truth and the lie as forces with political meaning. But such ideas did not begin in court inscriptions. They grew from older anxieties about trust in a hard world, in a society where survival depended on promises, shared labor, and loyalty among kin. Deception could be more than personal failure. It could threaten the fragile balance that held people together. The land also shaped their sense of protection. Mountains offer refuge, but they also divide. Valleys can nurture communities, but they can trap them. Open plains invite movement, but also raids. Fortified heights, guarded passes, and watchful alliances became part of life long before empire. The habit of looking outward, of asking who might be approaching beyond the ridge, created a world where vigilance was ordinary. A peaceful dawn did not mean a peaceful evening, and yet there was beauty here. At sunrise, the mountains could glow rose and gold. In spring, almond blossoms and wild herbs could soften the slopes. Streams flashed in narrow channels. Shepherds heard bells moving through morning air. At night, the stars seemed close enough to guide not only travelers, but thought itself. The same landscape that demanded discipline also gave people a sense of vastness, silence, and sacred height. This world did not produce Persia alone. To the west stood Elam, with deep roots in southwestern Iran, old cities, scribal traditions, temples, and political memory. Elamite culture had long interacted with Mesopotamia, fighting, trading, borrowing, and enduring. In time, the Persians would settle near regions where Elamite influence remained powerful. They would inherit not empty land, but a landscape already marked by administration, religion, language, and urban experience. That encounter mattered more than any single battle. A mountain people entering contact with older bureaucratic cultures could learn forms of rule that could never arise from pastoral life alone. The ability to record goods, organize labor, maintain storehouses, build monumental spaces, and command workers across seasons belonged to a more complex political world. The Persians did not invent everything they used. They grew by absorbing what the land and neighboring peoples offered. North and northwest, another force shaped them. The Medes, related Iranian peoples, formed larger political structures before Persian supremacy. Their presence gave the Persians both connection and tension. Through them, the Persians came nearer to the politics of highland power, cavalry strength, noble households, and the possibility that Iranian-speaking groups could command more than scattered tribes. The Persians were not simply waiting in darkness. They were learning in the shadow of relatives and rivals. Origin stories often seek a clean beginning. History rarely provides one. The Persian rise was born from mixture. Highland endurance met Elamite administrative memory. Iranian speech met older Near Eastern court culture. Pastoral mobility met settled agriculture. Clan loyalty met the growing need for kingship. Sacred ideas about truth, order, and right action met the hard necessities of tribute, war, and command. Slowly, a people became prepared for scale. Their homeland did not make domination inevitable. Many peoples lived in difficult landscapes and never built empires. But the conditions of early Persian life gave them certain strengths. They understood distance. They valued horses. They knew the importance of alliance. They could move between worlds, neither fully nomadic nor fully urban at first. They learned from stronger neighbors without disappearing into them. There is a quiet pattern in this. The greatest imperial stories often begin not at the center of civilization, but at its margins, where people see wealthy worlds nearby and learn both admiration and resentment. From the edge, they study the center. They learn its weaknesses. They imagine entering it. They borrow its tools, then reshape them for their own purposes. The Persians looked outward from hard country toward lands of rivers, cities, and ancient wealth. The plateau remained inside them. Even when Persian kings later sat in splendid halls, their authority still carried the memory of mountains, horses, fire, oath, and open distances. Their empire would dress itself in gold and carved stone. But beneath that surface lay older instincts formed by water scarcity, kinship obligation, guarded roots, and the moral seriousness of truth. Power began not with marble splendor, but with survival. At dusk, the highlands grow quiet. The last light leaves the ridges. The animals settle. A cold wind moves over stone. In that silence, before the names of great kings filled inscriptions, before foreign cities opened their gates, before royal roads crossed continents, There existed a people shaped by harsh beauty and patient necessity. The land did not tell them they would rule. It taught them how to endure. And endurance was the first language of Persia, far from the courts of kings. Persian life begins in smaller sounds. A hand pushes grain across a grinding stone. A child wakes to the smell of smoke. Hooves stir dust outside a low house built from mud brick, timber, reed, or packed earth, depending on what the land allows. Before empire becomes an idea, before royal commands cross provinces, there are families rising in the half-light, measuring the day by animals, water, tools, and fire. The morning is practical. Someone must tend the hearth. Someone must inspect the goats. Someone must carry water before the sun grows hard. Bread is prepared from barley or wheat, shaped by habit more than recipe. Milk may be turned into cheese or yogurt. Meat is precious, used with care, sometimes at feasts, sometimes in ritual, sometimes after an animal is too old for work or breeding. Dates, fruit, onions, herbs, and pulses may enter the meal where climate and trade permit. Nothing is wasted easily. In early communities, survival is not dramatic in the way battles are dramatic, but it is full of quiet tension. A cracked jar matters. A sick animal matters. A dry season matters. A lost tool may cost hours of labor. Hunger does not announce itself with trumpets. It arrives slowly, in thinner portions, in worried glances, in the way adults count sacks of grain when children are not listening. The house is both shelter and world. Inside, families store food, mend clothing, tell stories, arrange marriages, settle quarrels, and pass on names. A house holds memory, the corner where flour is kept, the sleeping place near the wall, the beam darkened by smoke, the clay vessel repaired more than once. These are small things, but they carry the shape of belonging. A person knows who he is partly because he knows where he sits by the fire. Kinship binds the living together. A family is not only parents and children, it may include grandparents, cousins, dependents, servants, herders, and allied households connected through marriage or obligation. Honor travels through these ties. So does responsibility. If one household suffers, another may help, but help is rarely without memory. Favors become threads. Debts become stories. A good alliance can save lives. A broken one can echo for generations. Children learn by watching. A boy may follow older men to the animals, learning which hoofprint belongs to which beast. When a horse is restless, when a dog is warning, and when it is merely barking. A girl may learn grinding, weaving, carrying, storage, milkwork, song, and the hidden authority of household management. These divisions are never as simple as later descriptions make them. In difficult country, everyone works. Necessity has little patience for neat categories. Tools reveal a civilization before monuments do. There are knives, awls, needles, spindle whorls, grinding stones, wooden yokes, leather bags, baskets, pottery vessels, metal fittings, and weapons kept close. A spear or bow may serve defense, hunting, status, and identity. A bridle is more than equipment. It is connection to mobility, to herding, to war, to prestige. The horse, in particular, carries a kind of promise, because whoever controls speed controls distance. Yet village life is not only labor. There are meals taken together when the day cools. There are festivals tied to seasons, births, marriages, and the turning of the year. There is laughter near the animals, gossip at water sources, songs repeated until no one remembers who first sang them. There are moments when the world seems generous, when rain has come, lambs are healthy, and the evening sky fills with a softness that makes hardship briefly quiet. Belief lives inside daily acts. Fire is tended with care, not merely for warmth and cooking, but because flame can become a symbol of purity, presence, and order. The treatment of water, earth, and living creatures carries meaning. Ritual speech matters. Oaths matter. Cleanliness and pollution may not be abstract ideas, but felt realities that influence how people handle bodies, food, animals, and sacred spaces. The unseen world is near the visible one. A family may gather in silence before flame. No grand temple is needed for reverence to exist. The sacred can be present in a courtyard, a high place, a household space, a seasonal gathering, or a burial ground. Prayers may be spoken softly. Offerings may be made with measured gestures. A child watches and learns that the world contains forces requiring respect. The stars overhead, the fire before him, the animals beyond the wall, and the breath in his own body all belong to a wider order. Death brings another kind of knowledge. Every society reveals itself in how it treats the dead. Some bodies may be buried with goods, ornaments, weapons, vessels, or signs of rank. Some customs change over time and place, reflecting older beliefs, local traditions, and developing ideas about purity. Grief has its forms. The dead must be separated from the living, but not forgotten. A grave can be a wound in the earth, or a statement about who belonged, who mattered, and what the living believe continues. Burial also teaches hierarchy. One person receives fine objects, another receives little. A child is buried with tenderness that leaves no royal inscription, yet carries immense human weight. A warrior's equipment may speak of status. A woman's ornaments may speak of family, identity, and wealth. Even in communities without palaces, inequality is not absent. It gathers quietly, in herds, metal goods, marriage ties, and control over land or water. Trade widens the village imagination. A bead from far away can make distance visible. A metal blade may carry the skill of craftsmen from another valley. A decorated vessel may imitate styles from older urban centers. Salt, wool, leather, grain, animals, timber, and metal pass through exchange networks that make even modest settlements part of a larger world. A trader brings goods, but also rumors. He speaks of stronger chiefs, richer lands, strange customs, wars, marriages, and roads watched by dangerous men. Such news changes people. A young listener may hear of cities where walls rise higher than hills, where scribes mark clay, where kings command more men than any clan elder could name. An old man may dismiss the stories, but he still remembers them. Desire begins in comparison. Fear begins there too. The wider world is not simply beyond the village. It presses against it through trade, migration, raids, alliances, and stories told after dark. Identity grows slowly from repetition. People know themselves through language, dress, food, animals, family names, gods, ancestors, and shared memory. They know who is kin and who is stranger. They know which customs mark respect and which bring shame. They know the songs sung at gatherings and the insults that must not be ignored. Long before officials define provinces, communities define themselves through practice, and yet identity is never still. A marriage brings someone from another group. A family moves because pasture fails. A trader settles among people not born his own. A conquered household adopts the speech of the powerful. A ritual changes shape. A tool from elsewhere becomes common. In this way, early Persian society forms not as a sealed vessel, but as a living fabric, woven and rewoven by contact. At night, the settlement settles into darkness. The animals breathe behind low enclosures. The fire sinks to embers. Stars fill the sky with patient brightness. Inside the houses, people sleep near the food they have gathered, the tools they have made, and the children who will inherit both their strengths and their fears. They do not know that later ages will search for them beneath layers of kingship and empire. But history is already there. It is in the hand that saves seed for planting. It is in the oath made before witnesses. It is in the care of a horse, the guarding of a spring, the arrangement of a grave, the sharing of bread, and the memory of ancestors spoken into smoke. Before Persia becomes vast, it is intimate. Before it commands nations, it learns how people live together under pressure. The empire begins, quietly, around the hearth. Power does not first appear as a crown. It gathers in a man whose herds are larger than others. It gathers in a household that can feed guests during a lean season. It gathers in a warrior whose name makes raiders hesitate beyond the ridge. It gathers in an elder whose judgment ends a quarrel before blood is spilled, long before royal splendor. Authority begins with usefulness, fear, memory, and trust. In the highlands and valleys where Persian society took form, leadership grew from relationships close enough to be seen. A chief could not hide behind distant walls. His people knew his horses, his sons, his temper, his generosity, and his failures. They knew whether he honored his promises. They knew whether he took the best land for himself, whether he listened to older men, whether he protected widows, whether he rewarded courage, and whether he punished insult too quickly. Authority was personal. That made it strong. That made it dangerous. A leader needed followers, but followers needed reasons. Some followed because of kinship. Some followed because food, pasture, or safety depended on it. Some followed because the chief's ancestors had held honor for generations. Some followed because he had married wisely and tied several families into one wider circle. Others followed because fear is also a form of order. The first structures of rule were not clean institutions. They were living webs of obligation. At the center of those webs stood the noble household. It was larger than a family in the narrow sense. It could include dependents, herdsmen, servants, armed companions, relatives by marriage, and men who had attached their fortunes to a rising lord. Such a household stored grain, guarded animals, hosted guests, and prepared for conflict. Its wealth was visible in animals, metal goods, weapons, textiles, horses, and the ability to give without becoming poor. Generosity was political. A feast could bind men as surely as a written command. Meat placed before a guest, a cup passed with honor, a cloak given to a loyal warrior, a horse entrusted to a young relative. These were not simple kindnesses. They created memory. They made relationships public. A man who received had reason to stand beside the giver when trouble came. Gifts became invisible chains, polished by courtesy. Yet feast halls also created rivalry. Who sat closest to the leader? Who received the better portion? Whose name was praised in song? Who was ignored in such moments? Rank became visible. A careless insult could grow into a feud. A missed honor could poison an alliance. Early political life was often performed through food, speech, seating, marriage, and controlled display. The table could be as important as the spear. Priests and ritual specialists added another kind of authority. They guarded words that had to be spoken correctly. They knew the rhythms of sacrifice, purification, prayer, and sacred fire. They carried memory that was not merely family history, but cosmic order. A warrior might command men in battle, yet he still needed ritual legitimacy. If the world was shaped by truth, purity, and divine order, then power without sacred alignment could appear unstable, even dangerous. The sacred did not stand apart from politics. An oath sworn before fire carried weight because it placed human speech under invisible witness. A treaty sealed with ritual could bind groups who did not fully trust one another. A ruler who honored sacred customs strengthened his claim to command. A ruler who violated them risked more than criticism. He risked appearing aligned with disorder, deception, and pollution. This gave priests influence, but not absolute control. Their power depended on reputation, tradition, and the willingness of chiefs to respect them. A wise leader used sacred authority carefully. He did not need to become a priest, but he needed priests nearby. Their voices could bless ambition or restrain it. Their rituals could turn a gathering of armed men into something more lasting, something touched by destiny rather than appetite. Councils also mattered. A strong chief could not always command alone. Nobles expected to be consulted, especially in matters of war, migration, punishment, and alliance. Elders carried experience. Warriors carried force. Priests carried sacred caution. A decision made without them might still be possible, but it would be brittle. Authority became durable when it looked shared, even when one will guided the outcome. In such councils, language was a weapon. Men argued through memory. They recalled old promises, past sacrifices, ancestral honors, and injuries that had never fully healed. A younger warrior might demand action after a raid. An elder might warn that revenge would cost too much. A priest might insist that the proper ritual season had not arrived. A chief might listen in silence, not because he lacked power, but because he understood that command spoken too early could weaken command itself. Fortified places began to change the meaning of rule. A stronghold on a hill, a walled enclosure, or a defended settlement allowed leaders to store goods and protect people. Storage is quiet power. Grain in a guarded space can feed warriors, reward laborers, and sustain followers during scarcity. Weapons kept under watch suggest organized defense. Animals gathered near a protected site reveal control over movement and wealth. Walls do not merely keep enemies out. They gather authority in. Taxes began as tribute, and tribute began as obligation. A household might owe animals, grain, labor, leather, metal goods, or armed service to a superior lord. At first, such demands could be framed as gifts, protection payments, or traditional dues. Over time, repetition hardened them. What was once negotiated became expected. What was expected became enforceable. The shift was subtle, but immense. Power learned how to count. Counting required trusted agents. A chief who ruled beyond the reach of his own eyes needed men to collect, remember, and report. At first, this might be done through oral record and personal knowledge. Who gave, who delayed, who owed, who served bravely, who withheld. As political structures grew more complex, memory alone became insufficient. Contact with older administrative cultures showed that marks, seals, tallies, and written records could extend authority beyond personal presence. The seal became a small object with enormous meaning, pressed into clay, tied to a container, attached to a door or document. It said that someone's authority had touched this thing. A sealed storehouse was not just closed, it was claimed. A broken seal could be theft, rebellion, or sacrilege, depending on context. Through such small acts, power entered the world of objects. The command of a leader could travel not only by voice, but by sign. Law also began as remembered judgment, a dispute over water, animals, marriage payment, injury, theft, or insult required resolution. If every conflict became revenge, society bled itself weak. Leaders who could settle disputes gained prestige. Over time, repeated judgments formed patterns. People began to know what penalty might follow a crime, what compensation might satisfy an injury, and what behavior placed a household outside protection. Justice, however, was never only fairness. It was also control. A leader who judged disputes could define acceptable conduct. He could favor allies, humble enemies, and present his decisions as restoration of order. Punishment made authority visible. A thief forced to repay, a violent man restrained, a rebellious noble shamed in public. These acts taught the community where power rested. Law was memory disciplined by force. Warrior elites stood close to this growing power. Their horses, weapons, training, and courage made them indispensable. They defended herds, raided enemies, escorted leaders, and enforced decisions. A chief without warriors was only a speaker. Warriors without a chief were danger without direction. Together, they formed the hard edge of early authority. Around them gathered songs of loyalty, vengeance, and honor. But warriors also threatened the leaders they served. A successful fighter gained followers of his own. A noble with many armed dependents could become a rival. A king in embryo had to balance reward and restraint, praise and suspicion. He needed courage near him, but not so near that it swallowed him. The politics of early power were therefore intimate and watchful. Men smiled at feasts while measuring each other's strength. Slowly, scattered authority began to take a more recognizable shape. Chiefs became lords. Lords became regional powers. Councils became instruments of rule. Priests blessed command. Warriors enforced it. Tribute fed it. Fortified sites housed it. Seals marked it. Judgment justified it. The world of small communities did not vanish, but above them rose structures that could organize many households toward a single purpose. At twilight, a hilltop stronghold looks simple from below. A wall follows the ridge. Smoke lifts from within. Animals move in pens. Men stand near the gate with spears. Somewhere inside, grain is stored, weapons are kept, and a leader receives those who come to ask, complain, bargain, or bow. It is not yet the image of universal kingship, but the essential elements are present: protection, tribute, sacred approval, armed force, memory shaped into command. In that gathering of powers, the foundations of Persian rule begin to harden. Authority has found places to stand. It has learned to speak through men, rituals, goods, walls, seals, and fear. It has learned that people can be guided by loyalty, fed by storage, bound by oaths, and counted through obligation. A crown is only the final symbol. The deeper monarchy begins much earlier, in the long, quiet labor of making obedience seem necessary. A great leader does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes he appears first as a problem inside another man's kingdom. A noble child, a provincial heir, a young man watched too closely by those who fear what his blood might one day claim. Around him, older powers continue their routines, collecting tribute, arranging marriages, rewarding loyalty, and punishing disobedience. Yet beneath the surface, people begin to whisper a name. Cyrus? His name would become one of the most resonant in ancient history. but it began in a world of danger and calculation. He belonged to the Persian ruling line of Anshan, a region tied to both Iranian and Elamite traditions. His family held authority, but not yet the kind of authority that could command continents. Around him stood stronger forces, older claims, and the heavy presence of Median power. The stories about his youth are difficult to separate from legend. Ancient writers loved to surround founders with omens, threats, hidden childhoods, and strange rescues. Such stories do not always give us clean fact, but they reveal what later generations believed a founder should be. A great king, they suggested, must be marked from the beginning. His life must feel as if it almost ended before it began. His rise must seem improbable enough to be remembered as destiny. In one tradition, a ruler dreams of danger, a child is feared. Orders are given, servants hesitate. A life meant to be extinguished survives in secret. The child grows beyond the reach of the one who feared him. Whether every detail is true matters less than the pattern it preserves. The future king is presented as someone whom power tried and failed to prevent. That idea is powerful. It turns survival into a sign. But Cyrus was not made by legend alone. He rose in a landscape of political opportunity. The Median realm, which had once gathered highland strength into formidable command, contained nobles, subject peoples, rival ambitions, and tensions beneath its surface. No large power is ever perfectly solid. It may look stable from outside, but inside are families seeking advantage, warriors frustrated by rank, local rulers waiting for weakness, and provinces that obey because they must, not because affection binds them. Cyrus understood this world. He was not merely brave. Many men are brave and vanish. He seems to have possessed a rarer quality, the ability to turn discontent into alliance. A revolt against a greater ruler requires more than anger. It requires timing, trust, messages sent carefully, promises made to men who risk their houses by listening. It requires the confidence to appear inevitable before inevitability exists. The first struggle for supremacy was therefore not simply a clash of armies. It was a contest of loyalties. Who would stand with the old order? Who would risk the new when warriors gathered? They did not only choose a side in battle, they chose the future structure of honor, land, wealth, and survival. A noble who misjudged the moment might lose everything. A soldier who followed the wrong banner might never see his home again. Cyrus moved through this danger with extraordinary patience. His ambition did not appear as reckless fire. It appeared as controlled flame. He could fight, but he could also wait. He could punish, but he often preferred to transform enemies into servants. This capacity would become one of the keys to his greatness. He did not simply break every defeated opponent. He made room for some of them inside the order he was building. That was not softness, it was strategy. A dead enemy cannot govern a province. A humiliated elite may rebel until crushed, but a defeated noble who keeps dignity, property, and a role may discover that obedience is profitable. Cyrus seems to have grasped that conquest lasts longer when it gives the conquered something to lose. Mercy, in his hands, could be a political instrument as sharp as a sword. When the Median king was overthrown, the balance of the highlands changed. The Persians did not merely escape subordination. They inherited a larger political world. Soldiers, nobles, fortresses, tribute routes, and ceremonial habits could now be redirected. What had belonged to one ruling structure could be absorbed by another. Cyrus stood at the center of this transformation, not as a tribal raider satisfied with plunder, but as a king learning how to convert victory into legitimacy. Legitimacy had to be seen. A ruler needed titles. He needed ceremonies. He needed the acceptance, or at least the managed cooperation, of those who understood power's language. He needed old elites to bow without feeling that the universe had ended. He needed new followers to believe their loyalty had been rewarded. He needed enemies to decide that resistance was more costly than service. This is where Cyrus becomes larger than a successful rebel. He begins to appear as a builder of political trust across difference. That does not mean everyone loved him. Empire is not born from affection alone. It means he found ways to make various groups function beneath his kingship. He could present himself differently to different audiences, while preserving the core truth that all authority now flowed toward him. The warrior saw victory, the noble saw opportunity, the priest saw order restored, the merchant saw roads made safer by a stronger hand, the defeated ruler saw that survival might still be possible. Such flexibility required imagination. Cyrus seems to have understood that the world was not governed by one language of power. Highland warriors valued courage and generosity. Old cities valued tradition, temple respect, and continuity. Local elites valued honor and status. Soldiers valued reward. Common people valued protection from chaos, at least when protection did not become unbearable. A king who wished to rule widely had to speak to all of these needs. His rise also depended on a certain personal image. Later, memory often paints Cyrus as unusually just, restrained, and magnanimous. We should listen carefully to such praise, because royal reputations are shaped by politics. Yet the persistence of this image is itself meaningful. Many conquerors were remembered chiefly for terror. Cyrus was remembered, even by some outside Persian tradition, as a ruler whose victories could open rather than only destroy. There's a quiet power in that distinction. A city waiting behind walls fears the worst from a conqueror: massacre, enslavement, looting, desecration, famine, humiliation. If word spreads that one king may spare temples, honor local customs, and preserve existing offices, then fear begins to change shape. Resistance may weaken before the first assault. Diplomacy becomes possible where despair might have hardened people to the end. Cyrus did not invent mercy in politics, but he used it with memorable effectiveness. His greatness lay partly in knowing when restraint could achieve what violence could not. A ruler who always destroys must rebuild from ashes. A ruler who preserves can occupy the living machinery of a state. The scribes remain. The storehouses function. The priests continue their rituals. The farmers return to fields. Tribute begins to flow under a new name. Ambition remained at the heart of it. Cyrus was not a wandering philosopher of tolerance. He was a king of war, expansion, calculation, and command. His armies moved because he desired power. Men died because his horizon widened. Yet history often turns on rulers whose ambition is disciplined by practical intelligence. Cyrus wanted dominion, but he also wanted it to endure. That difference separates empire from plunder. Imagine him at the moment when regional victory becomes something larger. He stands among nobles who once would have outranked him. Messengers arrive with news from distant lands. Tributary rulers weigh submission. Warriors expect reward. Priests observe the signs. Around him, the old world has not vanished, but its direction has changed. The question is no longer whether Cyrus can survive. The question is how far his kingship can reach. Such a moment is dangerous. Success attracts followers, but it also creates expectation. Every victory demands another decision. Every new territory brings new obligations. Every ally must be satisfied. Every enemy must be watched. A king who rises quickly must master the speed of his own ascent, or be destroyed by it. Cyrus entered this pressure and seemed to grow within it. His leadership joined several qualities rarely held in balance. He had the courage to challenge superior power. He had the patience to gather allies. He had the ruthlessness to fight decisive wars. He had the restraint to spare what was useful. He had the symbolic intelligence to where legitimacy in forms others could recognize. He had the political instinct to turn defeat into service. That combination altered history. Under Cyrus, Persia ceased to be merely one power among neighboring powers. It became the center of a widening imperial movement. The name of the king began to travel farther than his body. Men who had never seen his face began to consider what his friendship, anger, or command might mean. His authority moved outward through fear, admiration, negotiation, and the strange calm that follows a conqueror who understands preservation. That evening, one can imagine a camp after victory. Horses breathe in the cooling air. Fires burn low. Guards stand at the edge of darkness. Captured standards rest near royal tents. Somewhere nearby, defeated nobles wait to learn whether they will die, serve, or be sent home under oath. Cyrus listens, measures, decides. His power lies not only in winning the field, but in choosing what the field will mean. From such decisions, a new kind of empire begins to take shape. Not an empire of destruction alone, not an empire of kindness either. Something more durable and more unsettling. A rule that could conquer a people, then invite its leaders to help maintain the very order that had defeated them. A kingship that could look merciful while remaining absolute. A vision that could turn enemies into pillars. Cyrus became great because he understood that the gate to power is not always broken open. Sometimes it is persuaded to turn on its hinges. Babylon waits behind its walls, immense, ancient, and watchful. The city rises from the flat land of southern Mesopotamia with the confidence of a world that has survived many kings. Its walls hold temples, storehouses, canals, crowded quarters, markets, gardens, shrines, workshops, and streets worn by generations of feet. The Euphrates moves through it like a sacred artery. At night, lamps burn in houses of mud brick. Priests walk through courtyards. Scribes bend over tablets. Merchants count silver in the shadow of gods. This is not an ordinary city. To enter Babylon is to step into one of the deepest memories of the ancient Near East. Here, kings had spoken to heaven through ritual. Here, astronomers watched the sky with patient eyes. Here, temple estates owned fields, laborers, animals, and archives. Here, festivals could renew the bond between king, god, and city. Babylon was not only a prize, it was a symbol of cosmic order, urban wealth, and sacred authority. A conqueror could not treat such a place carelessly. Its people had known imperial rule, rebellion, restoration, and disappointment. They had seen armies come and go. They understood the language of power very well. They knew that a new king might claim to be chosen, but claims had to be performed in proper forms. A ruler who wanted Babylon had to win more than its gates. He had to win, or at least manage, its priesthoods, its records, its rituals, and its public memory. The tension gathers quietly. Beyond the city, armies move through the land. Reports arrive in fragments. A battle has been fought. A governor has changed sides. A road is unsafe. A provincial force has failed to hold. In great cities, fear often travels faster than official news. A merchant hears one version in the market. A temple servant hears another. Soldiers at the gates speak in low voices. Families store grain, close doors early, and listen. The final approach to Babylon is surrounded by uncertainty. Ancient accounts do not all agree in every detail, and memory has polished the event into something almost ceremonial. Yet the essential transformation is clear. Babylon, the city of old kings and powerful gods, passes into Persian hands with startling speed. It does not become a ruin under a long siege. It does not vanish in smoke. It opens, or is opened, into a new political world. That is the astonishing part. A city so large, so famous, so spiritually charged, might have chosen desperate resistance. Its walls could have turned conquest into exhaustion. Its people could have suffered famine, fire, and street fighting. But history sometimes turns, not where the blood is deepest, but where the decision to resist loses its strength. When trust in the old ruler weakens, even massive walls begin to feel hollow. The ruler Babylon leaves behind has a troubled reputation in many traditions. His religious policies, long absences, court tensions, and relations with important cults seem to have damaged his standing among powerful groups. In a city where divine favor mattered deeply, political weakness could appear as sacred failure. If priests and elites believed the existing king had neglected or offended the proper order, then a foreign conqueror could present himself not as destroyer, but as restorer. This was the opening Persia needed. The Persian army did not merely bring force. It brought a message. The new king could be framed as chosen by the great god of Babylon to correct disorder. This was not Persian humility. It was imperial intelligence. To rule Babylon, one had to speak Babylonian political theology. One had to understand that legitimacy could be written in local language, placed in temple context, and preserved by scribes who knew exactly how kings were supposed to sound. So the conquest becomes more than military victory. It becomes a masterclass in adoption. The incoming ruler does not need to erase Babylon's sacred identity. He can step into it. He can honor its god, protect its temples, respect its ceremonial importance, and present his arrival as a liberation from improper rule. The city's ancient machinery of legitimacy, once turned toward another king, can be redirected. Imagine the moment of entry. The gates stand before the advancing force. People watch from walls, rooftops, alleys, and temple precincts. Some are frightened, some are curious, some are relieved. Some are calculating what this change will cost them. Soldiers pass through streets that had carried processions for gods and kings. Their language may sound foreign, their clothing unfamiliar, but their commander understands the need for order. No city of Babylon's scale could be allowed to collapse. Storehouses must be protected, temples must continue, records must be preserved, markets must reopen, Canals must be maintained. Officials must know whether they are dismissed, retained, watched, or rewarded. The new empire cannot feed itself on ruins. It needs functioning cities, obedient elites, and tax systems that keep moving. The calm after entry matters as much as the entry itself. This is where the turning point becomes enormous. With Babylon in Persian hands, Persia gains not only wealth, but inheritance. It gains access to old administrative practices, scribal classes, temple networks, agricultural systems, and symbolic prestige. The conqueror of Babylon can claim a place among the great kings of the ancient Near East. The city's capture transforms regional power into something broader, older, and more universal in ambition. The map changes, but so does imagination. Once Babylon is taken, the idea of ruling many ancient peoples becomes less impossible. If this city can be absorbed, with its gods, archives, scholars, and immense prestige, then other centers may also be brought beneath the same royal horizon. Conquest now has a pattern. Enter, reassure, preserve, claim legitimacy, collect tribute, maintain order, and move the center of command outward. Yet beneath the calm surface, the event is full of human uncertainty. A scribe in a temple archive may wonder whether his work will continue under the new king. A father may ask whether his sons will be drafted for distant service. A merchant may think of safer routes and wider markets. A priest may study the royal proclamations carefully, measuring each phrase for respect. A soldier may sleep beside a wall built by men whose names he cannot pronounce. Every person must interpret the new world. For some, Persian rule may seem like relief after mistrust and instability. For others, it is merely a foreign yoke wrapped in sacred language. Empires often arrive with promises that sound generous near the beginning. Time tests them. Tribute will still be demanded. Labor will still be organized. Disobedience will still be punished. But in the first days, what matters most is that the city lives. Babylon's survival is the message. The temples are not leveled. The scribes are not silenced. The great urban rhythm continues under new sovereignty. This creates a powerful lesson for cities watching from afar. Submission does not necessarily mean annihilation. Resistance may bring devastation, but acceptance may allow continuity. Persia's imperial reputation grows not only through fear of its armies, but through the possibility of being spared. Still, the victory carries a deeper consequence. By taking Babylon, the Persian king enters the old contest between earthly rule and cosmic order. He is no longer only a highland conqueror or regional overlord. He becomes a ruler who must maintain canals, protect temples, manage urban populations, negotiate with priesthoods, and speak in the language of ancient kingship. The burden of empire grows heavier with every prestigious conquest. Power has widened, responsibility has widened with it. In the city's quiet courtyards, life resumes with careful attention. Bakers knead dough. Boatmen move along canals. Priests continue offerings. Scribes press wedge-shaped signs into clay, recording transactions that will outlast the voices of everyone involved. Children chase one another through streets where soldiers now stand beneath foreign command. The world has changed, but the morning still requires bread. This is how history often accelerates, not always with the destruction of a city, but with its incorporation. A conquest that does not burn can be more transformative than one that does. Babylon becomes a living engine inside Persian power, giving the empire wealth, legitimacy, knowledge, and administrative depth. Its capture teaches Persia that ruling the world requires more than winning battles. It requires entering the memories of others and making those memories serve a new throne. The great city remains beneath the sun. Its walls cast long shadows. Its canals shine in the light. Its temples hold the scent of offerings. Above them all, a new royal name begins to circulate through tablets, proclamations, prayers, and whispered conversations. The people of Babylon have seen kings before. They will judge this one by order, tribute, ritual, fear, and grain. For the empire, the gate has opened wider than stone. An empire cannot live by victory alone. Armies may open gates, scatter enemies, and place new names on old thrones. But conquest is only the first breath of power. The harder task begins when the soldiers move on. Fields must be planted. Roads must be guarded. Taxes must be collected. Judges must hear disputes. Rebellious nobles must be watched. Distant governors must remember that the king is far away, but not absent. This is where Persia becomes something more durable than a storm. Across its territories, rule begins to take shape through systems that are less dramatic than battle, but more important for survival. The empire is divided into great administrative regions, each governed by men who stand between local society and royal command. These governors, often called satraps, must balance loyalty upward with control downward. They are servants of the king, yet in their provinces they can appear almost kingly themselves. That balance is dangerous. A satrap has soldiers near him, money passing through his hands, noble families seeking his favor, and local elites learning his habits. If he is weak, the province may slip toward disorder. If he is too strong, he may begin to imagine independence. The royal court, therefore, needs more than trust. It needs inspection, rivalry, records, messengers, and the silent knowledge that no powerful man is ever completely unwatched. So the empire learns to govern through overlapping eyes. A provincial governor may command administration, but military officers, royal secretaries, tax agents, and inspectors can report separately. A message can pass around him. A complaint can reach higher authority. A sudden visitor from the king can make even a proud governor reconsider his arrogance. Persian rule does not depend on kindness. It depends on carefully arranged suspicion, softened by honor and reward. The royal messenger becomes one of the empire's most important figures. He does not look as grand as a king in ceremonial robes. He does not command a battlefield, yet in his leather bag may rest the fate of cities, officials, soldiers, and families. A sealed order moves from station to station, across valleys, rivers, deserts, and highlands. Fresh horses wait, guards protect the route. The road turns distance into delay, but not into silence. The speed of communication changes power. A rebellion that once might grow for months before a distant ruler heard of it can now be reported sooner. A governor who delays tribute knows that questions may arrive. A military commander can receive instructions from far beyond the horizon. A royal order, once sealed, carries presence. The king's body remains in one place, but his will travels. Roads become the empire's nerves. Some are ancient routes improved and guarded. Some are carefully maintained imperial arteries connecting major centers. Along them stand stations, wells, storehouses, bridges, and guarded points. These places may seem humble, but they hold the structure together. A broken bridge can slow an army. A dry station can weaken a courier. A neglected pass can invite raiders. Administration depends on mud, timber, stone, rope, animals, and men who repair what rulers rarely notice. Trade follows these pathways. Merchants benefit when roads are safer and frontiers are quieter. A seller of textiles, metalwork, spices, timber, wine, grain, or horses may travel farther under imperial protection than he would in a fractured world of small hostile powers. Taxes and tolls take their share, but stability can still bring profit. In markets from Anatolia to Mesopotamia, from the Levant to the Iranian heartlands, goods move with a confidence supported by force. Money helps bind the system. Coinage, especially in Western regions, gives imperial exchange a sharper form. Gold and silver do not replace all older methods of payment, barter, weighing, and accounting, but coins carry royal authority in the hand. A stamped image makes value visible and portable. Soldiers can be paid. Tribute can be assessed. Merchants can calculate. A small piece of metal becomes a traveling announcement that the king's order reaches even into the marketplace. But no system rules only through metal. Records are the hidden architecture of empire. Lists of grain, animals, workers, rations, journeys, payments, and deliveries allow distant authority to become practical. Scribes, translators, and accountants are as necessary as soldiers. They preserve obligations and marks that outlast excuses. They turn human labor into numbers. They make it possible for a court to know who owes what, who received what, and which official may have allowed silver, grain, or animals to disappear into private hands. In storerooms and offices, empire becomes quiet. A clerk bends over a tablet or document. He notes the amount of flour issued, the number of workers fed, the animals assigned, the wine delivered, the journey authorized. His work may seem small, but without such records, palaces starve, armies go unpaid, laborers vanish, and officials lie without consequence. The empire's grandeur rests on countless acts of counting. Language itself becomes a tool of rule. Many peoples continue to speak and write in their own ways, yet the empire requires practical communication across difference. Aramaic, already useful across much of the Near East, becomes a widely employed administrative language. It can travel with officials and scribes from province to province. It does not erase local tongues. It helps the king's business cross linguistic borders. This is one of Persia's greatest strengths. It does not insist that every subject become Persian in daily life. Instead, it builds a layer of imperial function above local identities. A Babylonian may remain Babylonian. An Egyptian may remain Egyptian. A Phoenician may remain Phoenician, while each is drawn into larger systems of taxation, service, communication, and law. The empire does not make all people the same. It makes their differences governable. Religion, too, is handled with care. Local gods, temples, priesthoods, and rituals often continue, provided they do not become centers of rebellion against royal order. This policy is not modern tolerance in a sentimental sense. It is practical wisdom. Temples own land, shape memory, command respect, and influence obedience. To destroy every sacred institution would create endless resistance. To protect them can make priests into guardians of stability. Yet protection carries a condition. The sacred may continue as long as it does not challenge the throne. A temple may keep its rights, but the king remains above all local powers. A priest may bless order, but he cannot define sovereignty apart from imperial authority. The empire allows many doors to the divine, while placing a royal roof over the houses that contain them. It is a delicate arrangement, and for long stretches, it works. Military organization gives the system its hard edge. Persian nobles provide cavalry. Subject peoples provide specialized troops, sailors, archers, infantry, engineers, and support personnel. Garrisons hold key sites. Fortresses watch passes and frontiers. Naval power relies heavily on maritime peoples who know ships and coasts better than inland Persians ever could. The imperial army is therefore not one simple people in arms. It is the empire itself, assembled for movement. Such diversity can be powerful. Different regions bring different skills. Horsemen from the Iranian world, archers from one region, sailors from another, engineers from older urban societies, local levies familiar with terrain. All can serve the king's campaigns. But diversity also requires coordination. Orders must be understood. Supplies must arrive. Rivalries must be managed. Men must be persuaded, paid, compelled, or honored into staying under one command. Supply is the quiet master of war. An army crossing dry lands needs water. An army moving through mountains needs pack animals and guides. An army staying too long in one place consumes the countryside around it. The Persians learned to think in routes, depots, tribute flows, and seasonal timing. The empire's ability to wage war depends not only on courage, but on grain, fodder, shoes, leather, carts, river crossings, and the patience of those who arrange them. Architecture helps make power visible. Royal centers rise or expand as places of ceremony, storage, administration, and awe. Palaces do not merely house kings, they teach visitors how to feel. Wide stairways slow the body. Reliefs show ordered peoples bringing tribute. Columns lift the eye. Gateways frame approach. Inscriptions speak of favor, truth, order, and royal command. The building itself becomes a lesson in hierarchy. A visitor understands before anyone explains. He walks upward. He sees guards carved in calm repetition. He sees representatives of nations arranged in dignified submission. He sees stone turned into political thought. Nothing looks accidental. The empire presents itself not as chaos held by force, but as a harmonious world arranged around the king. That image matters, because people obey more easily when power appears inevitable. Gardens offer another image of rule. A royal garden is not only a place of pleasure, it is a world ordered by human will. Water led through channels, trees planted in design, shade created in a dry land, animals and plants gathered from different regions into one enclosed vision. The garden expresses a dream similar to empire itself. Diversity made beautiful through control, fertility drawn from discipline, nature persuaded to serve kingship. Still, systems must touch ordinary lives. A laborer assigned rations may know empire as measured grain. A craftsman may know it as palace work. A sailor may know it as service in a fleet. A village headman may know it as the annual burden of collection. A noble may know it as opportunity at court. A prisoner may know it as relocation. An exile may know it as a road leading away from home. The system is vast, but each person meets it in a particular form. That variety helps explain its endurance. The empire does not press every subject with equal weight at every moment. Some regions experience heavy military presence. Others mostly feel taxation. Some elites gain prestige by serving the king. Others resent lost independence. Some communities benefit from restored temples or safer trade. Others remember punishment and forced submission. Persian rule survives by being many things at once, adaptable enough to feel different in different places, yet firm enough to remain recognizable. At the center stands the royal court. It is a place of ceremony, family politics, petitions, ambassadors, guards, eunuchs, nobles, scribes, servants, treasurers, and watchful silence. Here decisions ripple outward. Here reputations rise and fall. Here gifts are given, marriages arranged, punishments ordered, campaigns planned, and governors reminded that their splendor is borrowed from the king. The court shines, but it is also a machine. No machine runs without friction. A delayed payment angers soldiers. A harsh collector stirs resentment. A corrupt official steals from both king and subject. A proud satrap ignores warnings. A local cult fears interference. A frontier tribe tests imperial strength. Each problem is small until it connects with others. Persian administration is impressive, not because it eliminates trouble, but because it creates ways to respond before trouble becomes dissolution. This is the central achievement. The empire takes conquest and gives it memory. It gives it roads, seals, coins, offices, storehouses, documents, ceremonies, garrisons, and gardens. It builds routines that continue when no army is visible. It makes distant peoples participate in their own governance under royal command. It understands that a throne is strongest when the world beneath it keeps moving, even while the king sleeps. Night falls over a roadside station. A tired rider arrives with dust in his beard and a sealed order under his cloak. In the stable yard, another horse is ready. A clerk notes the passage. A guard lifts a lamp. Far away, a governor will soon receive words formed in the royal center. Farther still, merchants sleep beside their goods. Soldiers sharpen blades. Priests tend fires. And farmers wonder how much grain will be taken when officials come. The empire is not only expanding now, it is learning how to last. At dawn, the royal city wakes under a sky that seems polished by cold light. Stone terraces catch the first color of morning. Columns rise from the platform like an ordered forest, their shadows long and blue across the paving. Workers move quietly through courtyards. Servants carry vessels, folded cloth, baskets of bread, and jars sealed against the dust. Somewhere, a groom calms a horse. Somewhere else, a scribe prepares his tools, because even splendor must be counted. Persian greatness is not only found in battle lines or provincial records, it is also found in the way power teaches the eye to look upward. A palace is a theater of the world. The visitor approaches slowly, not by accident, but by design. Steps rise broad and shallow, as if inviting a formal procession rather than hurried movement. Stone figures appear along the walls, calm and repeated, each carved with careful attention. Men bring vessels, animals, weapons, cloth, ornaments, and offerings. They're not shown in panic. They're shown in order. The empire wishes to be seen as harmony. This is a vision made from stone. Every carved beard, robe, bracelet, dagger, and folded garment says that difference has been recognized and placed within a larger pattern. The subject peoples remain distinct enough to be identified, yet arranged enough to seem obedient. No shouted command is needed. The reliefs speak softly. The world has many faces, they say, but all of them turn toward the king. Inside this vision, wealth moves with ritual slowness. Gold bowls gleam in shadow. Silver vessels catch the light. Fine textiles soften walls and floors. Cedar beams from distant mountains hold roofs above halls where ambassadors wait, courtiers listen, and guards stand with disciplined stillness. The scent of incense mingles with wool, leather, polished wood, oil, and human breath. The sound of sandals on stone becomes part of the ceremony. The king is not merely a ruler here. He is the center of a carefully arranged universe. His body must be approached correctly. His presence must be framed by clothing, architecture, silence, gifts, guards, and distance. The more powerful a king becomes, the less ordinary he can appear. He must become visible and unreachable at the same time. That is the paradox of imperial majesty. Everyone must know where power sits, but few may come too near it. Beyond the audience halls, another world continues. Workshops hum with craft. Metalworkers shape precious objects. Stonecutters refine surfaces. Carpenters fit imported timber. Weavers produce cloth for ceremony, storage, payment, and display. Potters, leatherworkers, jewelers, cooks, cleaners, stable hands, guards, accountants, and laborers keep the royal world alive. Splendor is never effortless. Behind every polished surface stands a crowd of tired hands. The golden age of Persia is therefore not a single brightness. It is a system of brightness, fed by fields, mines, forests, roads, ports, workshops, and tribute. The cup on a royal table may contain the labor of many provinces. The wood above a hall may have traveled from a distant mountain. The stone may have been cut by men whose names were never carved. The robe may carry the skill of women who worked far from the court's gaze. Yet the empire does not only consume, it also connects. Markets in great cities fill with languages and goods. A merchant may see dyed cloth from the coast, spices from warmer lands, metalwork from mountain regions, grain from river valleys, and horses from high plains. In ports, sailors watch winds and cargo. In inland bazaars, scales measure silver, hands test fabric, and rumors travel faster than caravans. A wealthy buyer can taste the empire's reach in a single meal. Food itself becomes a map. There is bread and wine, dates and figs, roasted meats, pulses, herbs, dairy, nuts, and fruits gathered from different climates. At elite tables, abundance speaks of command over distance. In humbler houses, food still follows season, price, and local harvest. The empire may unite roads, but hunger and comfort remain unevenly distributed. A palace feast and a village supper belong to the same world, yet not the same experience. Festivals interrupt ordinary time. In sacred and royal calendars, certain days become heavier with meaning. Fires burn cleanly. Prayers are spoken. Offerings are prepared. People gather, dress carefully, visit kin, renew loyalties, and mark the turning of seasons. The arrival of spring carries special power in Iranian lands, where new growth answers months of cold or dryness. Renewal is not only agricultural, it is moral, social, and cosmic. The Persian worldview carries a deep concern with order. Truth is not merely the absence of lying. It is alignment with the way things ought to be. Disorder is not merely inconvenience. It can appear as a force that corrupts speech, loyalty, justice, and the rightful arrangement of society. In such a world, a king claims more than political authority. He claims the duty to defend order against chaos, rebellion, falsehood, and violence without rightful purpose. Fire holds a special place in this imagination. A clean flame draws the eye inward. It consumes, illuminates, warms, and purifies. In sacred practice, fire can become a visible sign of reverence, watched with care and approached with discipline. It is not worshipped as a simple object. It is honored as a pure presence within ritual life, a witness to prayer, truth, and moral seriousness. Before flame, careless speech feels out of place. Water and earth also demand respect. The natural world is not treated as empty material. Springs, rivers, cultivated land, animals, and growing things belong to a moral landscape. To preserve purity is to preserve order. To pollute what sustains life is not only practical harm, but spiritual danger. This sense of sacred ecology does not make society gentle in every respect, but it gives daily acts a deeper weight. Myths and royal ideas meet in this atmosphere. The king stands beneath divine favor, yet he must also prove worthy through justice, strength, and the maintenance of truth. Royal inscriptions speak in firm, measured language, presenting rebellion as disorder and obedience as rightful alignment. This is politics expressed as cosmic grammar. To oppose the king is not described merely as ambition. It can be named as participation in the lie. Such claims are powerful. They make government feel inevitable, even moral. They also make dissent dangerous, because rebellion becomes not only political refusal, but a sign of corruption. The empire's worldview gives dignity to law, loyalty, and order. It also gives rulers a sacred language for punishment. Beneath the calm words of truth and rightness lies the hard reality that kings define what public order means. Education belongs mostly to status. Noble children learn riding, archery, discipline, speech, loyalty, and the behavior expected of those born near power. They learn how to command and how to serve. The body is trained along with memory. A young aristocrat must understand horses, weapons, court manners, and the danger of disgrace. In a society of rank, education is preparation for visible conduct. Scribes receive another kind of training. Their skill lies in signs, numbers, formulas, languages, and the patience to make administration endure. They inhabit a world of documents rather than cavalry fields, yet their work is essential. A king may be praised in poetry, but he is maintained by records. The educated hand can preserve a transaction longer than any witness lives. In ink, clay, parchment, or leather, power gains duration. Social hierarchy shapes every part of life. At the top stand the royal family and great nobles, surrounded by privilege, danger, and expectation. Beneath them are officials, priests, warriors, landholders, merchants, artisans, soldiers, laborers, servants, and enslaved people. Status can be softened by wealth or service, but inequality is everywhere. Some people travel under protection. Others are moved by command. Some receive rations. Others dispense them. Women's lives vary by class, region, and circumstance. Royal and noble women may control estates, receive rations, manage workers, travel with retinues, and influence dynastic politics. Ordinary women labor in households, fields, workshops, and family economies. Their work is often less visible in grand narratives, yet no society functions without it. A palace garden, a village meal, a woven cloth, a child raised into loyalty. Each carries women's labor inside it. Burial customs and death practices reveal the complexity of belief. Across the empire, people die according to many traditions. Egyptians preserve bodies with ritual care. Babylonians bury their dead within older customs. Iranian practices develop around concerns for purity and the proper handling of decay. The empire does not create one uniform death. It rules over many ways of leaving the world. Even in death, diversity remains beneath imperial order. Art expresses this same balance. Persian imperial style draws from many traditions, yet becomes recognizable in its calm symmetry, polished surfaces, animal forms, floral patterns, processional scenes, and dignified human figures. It avoids the frenzy of battle in many official settings and favors composure. The message is not chaos conquered in violence. The message is balance already achieved. Gardens deepen the dream. In a dry land, a garden is almost a miracle of planning. Water moves through channels, trees give shade, flowers mark scent and season, birds call from branches, fruit ripens in enclosed peace. Such places offer rest, but also symbolism. A royal garden gathers life under design, just as the empire gathers peoples under command. Beauty and authority share the same pathways of water. For a while, the world seems arranged. The roads function, the courts glitter, the temples burn with offerings, the markets fill, the gardens breathe shade into hot afternoons. In the great halls, stone delegations climb forever toward a king who never ages. The empire has turned rule into ceremony, ceremony into worldview, and worldview into architecture. Yet the quietest wonder is human. A servant crossing a courtyard at sunrise may not think of cosmic order. She thinks of the weight of the jar in her hands. A craftsman polishing metal may think of his children. A noble waiting for audience may think of rivals. A priest near the flame may think of purity. A merchant counting goods may think of profit. Each life is small beside the empire, but the empire is made entirely from such lives. By evening, the palace stones cool. The sky darkens over columns, gardens, gates, and distant hills. Lamps appear one by one. Voices soften. Somewhere, a musician plays for listeners who understand that wealth, beauty, order, and longing are never far apart. The empire dreams of permanence, and for one calm moment, under the sacred sky, the dream seems almost true. At the height of Persian power, the king's shadow stretches across more lands than any ordinary traveler could imagine. From western sea roads to eastern highlands, from desert temples to mountain fortresses, from crowded river cities to lonely frontier stations, the empire stands like a great tent raised over many peoples. Its ropes are roads, tribute, armies, ceremony, marriage, fear, and habit. Its central pole is the king. Around him, the world seems arranged into ranks of obedience. Confidence fills the royal court. Ambassadors arrive with gifts and careful words. Provincial officers send reports written in formal language. Treasuries receive silver, gold, grain, textiles, animals, and luxury goods. Guards stand in disciplined silence. Noble families compete for honor near the throne. The air is heavy with perfume, wool, polished metal, and quiet ambition. To an outsider, everything may look stable, ancient, and immovable, but power at its brightest often hides its first shadows. The empire's greatest strength is scale, and scale is also its burden. A small kingdom can be watched by one energetic ruler. A vast empire must be watched through other men's eyes. Every distant province requires trust in officials who have their own families, enemies, appetites, and fears. Every army must be supplied. Every frontier must be defended. Every court faction must be managed before whisper becomes conspiracy. The king appears absolute, yet he depends on thousands. He depends on governors who collect revenue honestly enough to keep the treasury full. He depends on soldiers who remain loyal when campaigns grow long. He depends on scribes who preserve accurate records. He depends on nobles who accept royal favor without imagining the throne for themselves. He depends on royal relatives who know they are close enough to power to be dangerous, but not close enough to seize it without risk. This dependence creates unease inside majesty. Succession is one of the oldest dangers of monarchy. A king may rule firmly for years, but his death can turn palaces into battlefields of silence. Sons, brothers, wives, mothers, generals, eunuchs, priests, and noble houses all watch the line of inheritance. A prince raised in luxury may still fear another prince. A queen may protect her child's future with soft words and hard decisions. A courtier may gamble everything on the right claimant. The throne is never only a chair. It is access to armies, treasuries, offices, marriages, honors, punishments, and memory. Whoever sits there can raise friends and erase enemies. This makes loyalty complicated. Men may praise the living king while quietly preparing for the day his breath stops. They may swear devotion to one prince in public and send messages to another in private. The calm of court life can be a mask for careful survival. Beneath royal confidence lies the pressure of noble privilege. The empire rewards great families because it needs them. Nobles provide commanders, administrators, cavalry, and local influence. They bind the realm together through service. Yet every reward increases their power. Estates grow. Personal followings expand. Marriages connect ambitious houses. A governor who serves well may become indispensable, and the indispensable man always stands near temptation. The king must honor nobles without letting them become kings in miniature. He gives robes, titles, offices, and access, but he also watches. He may transfer officials, divide commands, send inspectors, demand hostages, arrange marriages, or promote rivals. Court politics becomes a delicate art of balance. Too much suspicion can alienate loyal servants. Too much trust can nourish rebellion. The ruler must sleep at the center of a web that trembles with every movement. Wealth creates another hidden weakness. Tribute fills storerooms and supports royal generosity, but extraction can harden resentment. In rich lands, officials may demand more because more can be taken. In poorer lands, even modest demands may wound deeply. Taxation does not feel the same in a palace ledger as it does in a village after a thin harvest. Silver counted in the treasury may represent animals sold, seed grain lost, daughters married hastily, or debts accepted in fear. An empire can be orderly and still feel heavy. A merchant may enjoy safe routes yet resent tolls and bribes. A farmer may welcome protection from raiders, yet dread collectors at the threshing floor. A temple may receive royal favor, yet fear changes in policy. A local noble may accept imperial rank while remembering older independence. These feelings do not always become rebellion. Often they settle quietly into bitterness. Waiting for weakness, overexpansion adds its own strain. Every new frontier promises glory, resources, and prestige. It also requires garrisons, roads, intelligence, diplomacy, and punishment. Mountains shelter defiant tribes. Deserts swallow columns. Sea crossings depend on weather and naval skill. Distant campaigns drain men from home provinces and place armies in lands where supplies are uncertain. Victory can open a gate to another problem, then another, then another. The imperial army is magnificent, but not weightless. It must be fed, paid, armed, mounted, transported, and coordinated across cultures and languages. A royal campaign gathers contingents from many lands, each with different equipment, customs, and expectations. This diversity shows imperial reach, but it also complicates command. The larger the force, the more vulnerable it becomes to confusion, delay, disease, hunger, and the slow exhaustion of men who no longer know why they are marching. Prestige demands success. A great king cannot easily appear cautious. His image rests on strength, favor, and command over disorder. If he fails, distant peoples notice. If a rebellion survives too long, other rebels learn. If an expedition ends badly, rivals whisper that divine favor has shifted. In such a system, reputation is not decoration. It is part of government. Once cracked, it invites testing. Palace life magnifies these dangers in miniature. In the cool rooms behind public ceremony, servants carry more than wine and linen. They carry rumors, a glance during audience, a delayed promotion, a prince's illness, a queen's anger, a commander's absence. All can become meaningful. People listen near curtains. They measure who is invited, who is ignored, who stands nearer to the royal seat. Great decisions may begin as murmurs among those who seem powerless. Corruption also grows where distance protects it. A local official can skim grain from deliveries. A tax collector can exaggerate quotas. A commander can report troops who exist only in records. A governor can delay payment while enriching his household. The king may punish such men when discovered, but discovery is never certain. The empire's vastness gives dishonest servants room to hide inside paperwork, fear, and local dependency. For ordinary people, corruption may matter more than royal policy. The king may proclaim justice, yet the villager meets the collector. The king may protect temples, yet the local officer may seize animals. The king may value order, yet a corrupt judge may sell decisions. Imperial ideals descend through human hands, and human hands are rarely clean. When people curse empire, they often curse the nearest face of it. Still, the empire remains formidable. Its treasuries are deep. Its roads are active. Its court commands awe. Its governors know the habits of rule. Its armies can still gather in numbers that frighten smaller states. Its symbols still shine. Its name alone can make cities hesitate before rebellion. Weakness is not collapse. It is stress beneath polished stone, invisible until pressure finds the crack. At its maximum power, Persia resembles a great palace hall. The columns are tall. The roof is wide. The carvings are calm. The floor reflects lamplight. Visitors whisper in admiration. Everything seems balanced and purposeful. Yet each column bears weight. Each beam depends on another. A small flaw may not matter. Many small flaws, left unseen, can change the sound of the whole building. The empire's danger lies not in one wound, but in accumulation, succession tension, noble rivalry, heavy taxation, distant wars, proud provinces, corrupt officials, exhausted soldiers, court intrigue, religious sensitivity, frontier unrest. None of these alone must destroy a realm. Together, they create a world in which strength must be constantly performed, repaired, and believed. Night settles over the royal residence. The guards remain at their posts. Lamps shine behind screens. Somewhere, a clerk closes a record. Somewhere, a noble speaks carefully over wine. Somewhere, a prince lies awake, listening to the silence around power. Beyond the walls, the empire continues to move through roads, granaries, temples, markets, ports, and villages. It is still immense. It is still feared. It is still magnificent. But beneath the surface of order, the burden of ruling so much has begun to breathe. Trouble begins at the edges, then finds its way inward. Along the borders, where imperial authority thins into watchtowers, passes, harbors, and negotiated loyalties, men test the strength of the king's hand. A delayed tribute, a refused order, a garrison attacked at night, a messenger who does not return. These are small signs, easily dismissed when the court is confident. Yet borderlands listen closely to one another, and weakness travels as rumor long before it becomes fact. The Persian Empire is too vast for every frontier to sleep peacefully. In the west, the Greek cities bring a different kind of danger. They are smaller than the empire, often divided against themselves, yet fiercely attached to their own forms of honor, argument, and local freedom. Their harbors look toward the Aegean. Their assemblies are noisy. Their elites can be ambitious, unstable, and useful. Some seek Persian support against rivals. Others call Persia tyranny. Many do both, depending on the season. This makes the Greek world difficult to master. A great imperial army can defeat a city, but it cannot easily quiet a sea of islands, alliances, grudges, and restless political experiments. One city submits, while another rebels. One tyrant accepts Persian backing while exiles plot revenge. A fleet may control a coast for a time, yet the winds, reefs, and narrow waters remain stubborn. Geography becomes politics. The sea refuses to behave like a road. In Ionia, resentment turns into flame. Greek cities under Persian authority feel the weight of tribute, appointed rulers, and imperial supervision. Local quarrels become wider resistance. Rebels seek allies across the water. Ships are launched. Plans are made with more courage than certainty. For a moment, the western edge of the empire becomes a place where local anger joins with a larger dream of shaking loose from the king's command. The revolt is not merely military, it is emotional. A city that has bowed for years begins to imagine itself standing upright again. Men who have paid tribute begin to speak of ancestors, rights, gods, and shame. Merchants wonder what war will do to trade. Farmers fear retaliation. Leaders promise courage, but courage must still face trained soldiers, deep treasuries, and the slow patience of imperial revenge. Persia answers with force. Cities that rise can be besieged. Fleets can be gathered. Punishments can be made public enough to instruct others. The empire knows that rebellion is contagious. It cannot allow every province to believe that distance from the royal center means safety. When resistance appears, suppression must restore more than territory. It must restore fear. Yet victory over rebels does not always end the problem. The memory of punishment can harden identity. A burned town may teach obedience for a generation, or it may teach children whom to hate. A defeated city may pay tribute again while preserving songs of defiance. The empire can command bodies, taxes, and walls. It cannot always command memory. That is one of the quiet limits of power. Across the sea, the contest grows sharper. The Greek mainland becomes not only a nuisance, but a stage where imperial prestige is tested before watching peoples. Expeditions are launched to punish, intimidate, and secure. The empire brings numbers, wealth, cavalry, archers, ships, engineers, and commanders accustomed to broad landscapes. But the lands and waters of Greece are narrow, broken, and politically stubborn. In such places, size does not always move easily. A large force may look invincible from afar. On the ground, it must pass through valleys, land on beaches, find supplies, coordinate ships, and adapt to enemies who know every ridge and harbor. A smaller army defending familiar land may choose where to stand. A fleet in tight waters may find that too many ships become a problem rather than a guarantee. The empire discovers that strength must change shape to fit the terrain, and not all terrain accepts imperial habits. Battles against Greek resistance leave marks deeper than their immediate losses. When a mighty king's forces fail to achieve what was promised, stories spread, enemies gain courage, subjects listen, allies reconsider. A defeat at the edge of an empire may echo in palaces far from the battlefield. It asks a dangerous question. If the great king can be resisted there, where else might resistance become thinkable? Egypt asks its own questions. The Nile Valley is rich, ancient, and proud. Its temples hold memories older than Persian rule. Its priesthoods understand legitimacy with extraordinary depth. Its people depend on the river, but they also carry traditions of kingship that do not easily vanish beneath foreign titles. Persian authority can be accepted when it respects sacred patterns and maintains order. It can be hated when extraction, insult, or neglect becomes too visible. Rebellion in Egypt is especially costly. The land's wealth makes it worth holding, but its distance and character make it difficult to pacify. The river can feed armies, yet also guide resistance. The temples can legitimize a ruler, yet also preserve old loyalties. A rebel who claims native kingship can speak to memories no foreign governor fully owns. Every Egyptian uprising forces Persia to spend treasure, attention, and soldiers in a land where victory must be repeated. In other regions, unrest takes quieter forms. A mountain people may refuse easy submission, retreating into terrain where imperial columns move slowly. A frontier lord may delay tribute while claiming confusion. A satrap may correspond too warmly with neighboring powers. Mercenaries may sell their skill to whoever pays. Traders may shift routes when war makes roads unsafe. Pressure does not always roar. Sometimes it accumulates as hesitation. External rivals learn from Persia even while opposing it. They study its roads, payments, armies, and royal habits. They observe how subject peoples are managed, how governors are appointed, how ships are built, and how wealth is moved. An empire teaches its enemies by existing. Every campaign reveals methods. Every failure reveals limits. Over time, those who resist Persian power become more skilled at surviving it. Climate and economy add pressure of another kind. A poor harvest can make taxation feel unbearable. Disrupted trade can reduce revenue and anger merchants. War can pull labor away from fields. Garrisons consume local supplies. Coin shortages, corruption, and emergency levies can make distant decisions painfully immediate in ordinary households. The empire may think in provinces, but suffering begins in kitchens and barns. Ideology also becomes a battlefield. Persian kings speak of order, truth, and rightful rule. Rebels speak of freedom, restoration, native kingship, divine favor, or ancestral custom. Neither side uses only weapons. Each tries to explain the world. A rebellion must convince people that danger is worth it. An empire must convince them that obedience is safer, proper, or inevitable. The struggle for belief accompanies the struggle for gates and fields. The hardest danger comes when internal and external pressures meet. A rebellious province seeks help from a foreign enemy. A frontier defeat encourages a satrap to hesitate. Court rivalry delays a military response. A financial burden increases provincial resentment. A distant campaign drains troops needed elsewhere. Problems that could be managed separately begin to reinforce one another. The empire is still powerful, but its attention must be divided. Divided attention is a form of weakness. A king can order many things, but he cannot personally stand in Egypt, Ionia, Babylon, Bactria, and the royal court at the same moment. He must choose where to send troops, whom to trust, which insult to punish first, which rebellion to isolate, which governor to remove, and which danger can wait. Delay becomes interpretation. If the king does not respond quickly, some will call it mercy, others will call it fear. On a frontier road at dusk, a messenger rides hard through dust. He carries news that may change a province. Behind him, smoke rises from a village where loyalty is broken. Ahead of him, a station master sees the horse lathered and understands that ordinary time has ended. Somewhere, a commander will be summoned. Somewhere, a clerk will open a tablet. Somewhere, families will hide grain and listen for soldiers. The empire still has strength enough to strike. Its armies can march. Its fleets can gather. Its treasuries can pay. Its officials can restore order in many places. But each restored order leaves behind the memory of how close disorder came. Each rebellion reminds subjects that empire is made by men, not by nature. Each failed expedition teaches enemies to wait for the next mistake. The borders burn, then quiet, then burn again. Inside the great structure, people continue their lives under a sky of uncertainty. Priests tend rituals. Merchants calculate risk. Farmers watch officials approach. Soldiers sharpen weapons beside foreign roads. Governors write careful letters. The king receives reports from lands that still speak his name, yet not always with trust. The empire remains vast, but vastness now feels less like certainty and more like exposure. The end of an empire does not arrive as silence. It arrives with hoofbeats, rumors, hurried councils, sealed orders, and frightened men pretending they are not afraid. It arrives as a distant army crossing a river. It arrives as a governor who hesitates too long. It arrives as soldiers looking over their shoulders, as nobles calculating survival, as royal messengers riding through dust with news that grows worse at every station. The Persian Empire had faced enemies many times. It had endured revolts, frontier wars, palace dangers, and bitter losses. Yet the final crisis came with a speed that made old confidence difficult to restore. A young Macedonian king crossed into Asia with a force far smaller than the full weight of Persia. But he brought discipline, ambition, and a hunger sharpened by memory. His soldiers carried long spears, hard training, and the belief that glory waited beyond the next ridge. At first, some may have seen him as another Western danger to be contained. The empire was accustomed to scale. It had money, cities, cavalry, vast manpower, and royal prestige. A frontier invader could be watched, delayed, bought, trapped, or crushed. Many powerful men must have assumed that time favored the great king. Persia had depth. It had provinces behind provinces. It had room to retreat and recover. But war sometimes moves faster than administration. At the Granicus, Persian forces failed to stop the invaders' opening advance. In Asia Minor, cities shifted in loyalty, some from fear, some from resentment, some from opportunity. The Macedonian army kept moving, and movement became part of its strength. Each victory fed reputation. Each surrendered city added supplies, confidence, and the dangerous impression that the old empire could be wounded. Then came Issus, there, in a narrow landscape, unsuited to easy imperial grandeur. The king of Persia and the king of Macedon faced one another in a battle that changed the emotional weather of the world. The Persian monarch still possessed resources beyond imagination. Yet the battlefield did not measure resources and storage. It measured formation, timing, nerve, and the ability to keep men from breaking when terror found them. The royal army gave way. The king escaped, but escape carries its own shadow. A living ruler can rebuild, but the sight of a king fleeing can travel like poison. Enemies turn it into proof. Allies turn it into concern. Subjects turn it into whispers. In monarchy, the body of the king is more than flesh. It is the image of command. When that image trembles, distant loyalties begin to loosen. The invader turned south. Coastal cities, naval bases, and wealthy regions passed into his hands. Tyre resisted with stubborn fury and paid dearly. Egypt welcomed change with its own ancient calculations, as it had often done when foreign rule seemed weaker than local hope. The Macedonian king presented himself in forms that older lands could understand. He did not merely fight Persia. He entered the political languages Persia itself had mastered. This is one of history's quiet ironies. The conqueror, who helped bring down Persian rule, learned from imperial methods as he advanced. He accepted submission. He used local elites. He honored certain traditions. He wore symbols that spoke to different peoples. He understood that victory over Persia required more than defeating Persian armies. It required taking over the idea of empire. The decisive wound came on the plains near Gaugamela. There, space opened wide enough for the royal army to display its strength. Chariots, cavalry, infantry, commanders, banners, and the vast apparatus of kingship gathered beneath the sky. It was the kind of field where Persian power might have expected to become overwhelming. Yet expectation is not destiny. The Macedonian formation held. The attack found its moment. The royal center shook. Once again, the great king withdrew from the field. After Gaugamela, the empire's heartlands began to open. Babylon surrendered. Susa yielded its treasures. The royal roads and palaces that had once carried Persian command now carried the conqueror's presence deeper into the realm. At Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of Persian kingship became a prize, a symbol, and a wound. Its storerooms were emptied. Its halls were entered by men from the west. The fire that consumed parts of it turned political conquest into memory, burned into stone. But the fall of Persia was not simply the defeat of a palace. The last Achaemenid king, Darius III, fled eastward, seeking time, troops, and loyalty. Around him, the old bonds tightened and snapped. In desperate moments, kings depend on the men nearest them. Those men may rescue, betray, delay, or decide that the future no longer belongs to the master they serve. Darius was eventually seized and killed by his own side, a death heavy with the loneliness of collapsing authority. A royal line ended without the dignity it had claimed for generations. Yet even then, Persia did not vanish. No conquest can erase an entire civilization by killing a king. The people remained. The languages remained. The fields still needed sowing. Temples still required ritual. Roads still crossed the land. Administrators still knew how to account, collect, seal, and command. The Macedonian conqueror inherited not empty space, but a living machine built by the rulers he had defeated. The empire changed its name, but many of its habits survived. Satrapies continued in altered form. Local elites remained useful. Royal ceremony influenced new courts. Administrative practices endured because they worked. The idea of ruling many peoples through a mixture of force, respect, display, and delegated authority did not burn away. It passed into the hands of successors, rivals, and later empires that studied the problem of governing distance. This is why Persia's legacy is so deep. It offered one of the ancient world's grandest answers to the question of diversity under power. It showed that a ruler could govern many languages without erasing them all. It showed that roads, records, tribute, ceremonial art, and political tolerance could extend command farther than terror alone. It also showed the costs of scale, the strain of overreach, and the fragility of systems that depend on royal prestige. In the ruins, the empire becomes quieter. A broken column does not explain itself. A carved procession continues without sound. Stone guards stand at attention for kings who no longer arrive. Wind moves across terraces where ambassadors once climbed, carrying dust into the seams of reliefs and the shadows of doorways. Lizards warm themselves where courtiers once waited. Grass finds places between stones. Time changes power into landscape. The great tombs cut into cliffs still face the open air. Their facades hold the memory of kings lifted above ordinary earth, carved as if authority could be made permanent by height and stone. Below them, generations pass. Shepherds move their animals. Travelers pause and look upward. Scholars copy signs. Children ask who made these places. The answers are never as complete as the silence. Persia survived in memory as both warning and model. To Greeks, it became the vast Eastern power against which freedom, ambition, and fear were imagined. To later Iranians, it became part of a deeper inheritance of kingship, land, language, and dignity. To administrators and conquerors, it offered tools. To artists, it offered forms. To historians, it offered one of the earliest examples of rule on a truly continental scale. Its influence moved beyond politics. The royal garden became a lasting image of ordered beauty. The road became a symbol of imperial reach. The King of Kings became a title echoing through later traditions. Ideas of truth, order, sacred responsibility, and the struggle against destructive falsehood continued to shape religious and moral imagination. Even when empires changed, the Persian contribution remained woven into the fabric of Western and Central Asia. And there is something deeply human in what remains. Behind the names of kings are the workers who carved stone, the women who managed estates, the scribes who counted rations, the soldiers who slept beside strange roads, the farmers who paid grain, the priests who guarded flame, the merchants who trusted guarded routes, and the children who grew up beneath an authority too large to understand. Their lives were the empire's true substance. Power disappears from the top first. A crown is taken. A palace is emptied. A royal name stops appearing in commands. But lower down, in habits, tools, stories, and landscapes, the old world lingers. People continue to bake bread, speak prayers, plant fields, repair walls, marry, mourn, bargain, and remember, the fall of empire is not the end of life. It is the rearrangement of meaning. At sunset, the ruins glow softly, the stone turns gold, then rose, then gray. Shadows lengthen across stairways where carved nations still move toward a throne that has become absence. No trumpet sounds, no king answers. Only wind passes through the broken spaces, touching the same surfaces that once reflected wealth, fear, ceremony, and hope. The Persian Empire almost gathered the known world beneath one rule. It failed to keep that world forever, as all empires fail. Yet its dream of ordered vastness did not disappear. It entered later history like a deep current beneath the surface, shaping how rulers imagined roads, provinces, courts, gardens, and the management of many peoples. Its fall was real. Its ending was not absolute. Night settles over the plateau. The stars appear above stone, mountain, and empty air. They shine over tombs, terraces, dry grass, and the faint paths of animals moving home. The empire is gone as command, but present as memory. It rests in fragments, in names, in ruins, in inherited ideas, and in the quiet knowledge that human beings once tried to make the world feel governable beneath a single sky. For a while, listen to that silence. It is not empty. It is history breathing slowly in the dark.